Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It is December the 18th. We are closing in on the end of the year. We are closing in on Christmas. And if you're checking your Advent calendar, we are just a few days away, inside 1 week from the big day. I know a lot of kids are pretty excited about that. We got some wild weather here in Central Texas. I was complaining to Joe Pags about this yesterday. It was 70 degrees yesterday. I went for a jog in a tank top, as ridiculous as that felt, in nothing but Ranger panties and no sleeves. And today it is in the 50s and it is pissing rain and it is driving because we don't do half-ass things here in Central Texas. We get rain coming at us from all directions and blowing across. So it's ugly out. And if you guys are in a real place with real winter and you're thinking, oh man, it's really cold and miserable here, can we just say, I'm a little envious of you. I dislike Texas schizophrenic weather. We got kind of a schizophrenic, kind of all over the map news day, so I'm going to cover down on a bunch of stuff. But today's lead is going to be something that's just a little bit silly because I just can't take it that seriously. The story of Canada. Our neighbors up in America's attic. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump trolling them as the 51st state. If you guys saw the thumbnail today, it had the 51st state. It's the Canadian maple leaf flag with a 51 on the inside. But I kind of think it's funny. I think we should probably even consider doing it in real life because there's a lot of unhappy Canadians. And they might be happier if they were Americans. They have a pretty unresponsive government, and that is the nature of the parliamentary system. It's not exactly ruled by all. Justin Trudeau doesn't get voted in by a popular majority. He has something like 32% of the votes the last time in his party, and they make these coalitions. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about Canada. We're going to talk about the concern the mainstream media has of Donald Trump going after Canadians and Justin Trudeau and so on, because they want to keep the status quo. They'd like to maintain this sort of global order of people that are on the hard left, and it helps if you have American neighbors in the up in the attic there. If the snow Mexicans continue to be basically borderline communists, then they get to win. They get to at least say, look how good things are in Canada. You remember we used to always have them say, well, they never have to pay for their medical care. I've actually seen some pretty interesting videos of people saying, like, not only do I pay, but I pay out the butt for medical care. And it's not something I want to keep doing. All right, before we get too deep into the weeds, let's go ahead and say thanks to a sponsor, because that's how this program gets done. This is why we're still on the air. And let's start with the folks over at Blackout Coffee. Folks, let me tell you about a company that is shaking up the coffee world. It is Blackout Coffee, and it's not your typical run-of-the-mill brew from a corporate giant that doesn't share your values. They're not going to strike like Starbucks coming up this year at the end of the year. Blackout Coffee is bold, it's unapologetic, and it is America first. This month, Blackout Coffee is making it easier than ever to give the gift of amazing coffee. You can also get cocoa, tea, and more. And that's right, Blackout Coffee is running sales all month long. Use our promo code KYLE. Whether it's a bag of the premium roasted coffee, whether it's a delicious cocoa or a box of specialty teas, if it's a hot beverage, then you can get it there to drink. And you can also find their gear. They've got mugs and shirts and more designed to make a statement, because when you're enjoying great coffee, it should look as good as it tastes. Do not wait. Head over to blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle right now. Stock up for the holidays, grab gifts that people will actually use, or grab something for yourself. Support a company that stands for the things that you believe in, serving up quality that you can taste. It's blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. KYLE is that promo code, blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Let's dive into this weird news day on a weird weather day, and hopefully we don't get cut off by the internet services. All right, so all of you that are out there in the chat, if you guys are watching right now, make sure you have liked the video. Make sure that you will subscribe to the video. And we're actually out there on YouTube again, which I've decided kind of against. I went ahead and played the game just a little bit. We're going to play within the rules and see if we can't grow this audience a bit. So if you're watching there, make sure that you've subscribed and turned the notifications on and so on. Do all those things. And if you guys ever get in a bind where you're like, there's too many advertisements, not from me, but from the outside services, you can always watch us at Spotify. I'd like to see that because they give us really good data on who you are, and it's kind of interesting to see who you are out there. So Spotify always has a video podcast uploaded after the fact, just so you all are aware. Let's do it. Here we go. Donald Trump is going after Canada, but everyone else is next. You know, I like to start at the homepage of CNN to see what the most trusted name in news has to say. And I realized that we haven't visited Stephen Collinson in a little while. He was kind of all over the map. He was the guy that I would see crying about Donald Trump first things first almost every single day during the campaign. And he's kind of been a little bit quiet, or at least I haven't been aware of his stories. They haven't been that interesting of late. So here's some analysis by my favorite analyst, Stephen Collinson. And a picture there of Donald Trump sitting next to Justin Trudeau. Trump is stoking political mayhem in Canada by intensifying a crisis that threatens to out Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, why on earth does CNN care? I believe, like I said, that they're just trying to continue with the sort of most favorite Canadian neighbor status. They want to make sure that they have someone that they can do. That's America's loyal neighbor and ally. And now we have a man, Donald Trump, and they said this, I swear to God, he says it's a preview of the belligerent strategy as he scours the globe for a big second-term win before even taking office. He's bullying an embattled political foe who he mocks as the governor of the 51st state. Oh, so much pearl clutching and so much outrage. Donald Trump shows a willingness to plunge the allies' domestic politics, and that should be a warning to strife-torn governments in places like France, Germany, and South Korea, where political chaos and internal divides make it hard for them to fight back. What are we seeing here? We're seeing an analyst at an American news station crying about the so-called strife-torn governments of places. What they've done is you've seen governments basically lose touch with their people. All of the governments might fall away from leftist policies, which is sort of like, oh God, we better all fall in line and just support government for its own sake. Now, I always say this, that leftism is a religion. It's a religion that worships government as its central deity. So whenever you start attacking the governments that have embraced that, you're going right up against, you're doing a heresy. And that's what Stephen Collinson seems to be indicating here. A couple things that he's really upset about. Canada, by the way, I just watched a video of Justin Trudeau talking to steel workers, talking about how he's protecting their jobs by adding 25% tariffs on steel. Donald Trump has threatened to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian goods in order to coerce that government in Ottawa to work more closely with, to have that sort of non-protective status against American goods. If you want to be on our team, you want to be in that sort of North American free trade situation, which was going on since the Clinton era, then you got to take that down. That's what he said. So he's just going to push it back. He's like, oh, you want to tariff our goods? We're going to tariff your goods. This is very, very bad. Why? Because Americans in leftist news organizations think that not only should we try to be more like the European governments that we are supporting, they kind of think that it's our job to give things away at the cost of American businesses. I'm seeing you guys in the chat adopt my favorite term, the snow Mexicans. I'll go on record again and say that snow Mexicans, aka Canadians, they don't really get offended by that term. In fact, because Canadians are really a polite people, and I think they just want to be left alone, probably a lot like most Americans. Snow Mexicans, the real ones, will ignore it if you call them that. And the ones that are the most pearl clutching and probably would be friends with people like Stephen Collinson, if you find those kind of snow Mexicans, what they will do if you offend them is they will go find someone else to apologize to, because Canadians are inherently friendly people. I had a buddy that lived up in Alberta for a little while and was working in the oil industry, and he found that they were very lovely people. I think most of them are probably aligned with the way that we operate, and so much so that we can kind of play a little funny thing. This is from a guy named Tom Green. Most of us don't realize or we do realize, and we're just not privy to it on a daily basis, that not only is Donald Trump trolling the so-called governor of the 51st states, but Canadians despise him. A lot of them do. So much so that it is commonplace to see very unpleasant-looking flags indicating their distaste. So here is Tom Green, who's a comedian, but pretty well versed in what goes on in Canada as a longtime Canadian. And he's talking about something that Americans don't see. The flags that say expletive Trudeau, he's going to say it. So if you're sitting at work, you need to turn down the volume or put on your earplugs, your earphones, so that you don't offend your boss, especially if your boss happens to be a snow Mexican. Enjoy this one.
You know what you would probably be amazed to see? I don't know if this is so common in Canada that we just don't even think to mention it. Driving around everywhere in the country, in the city, everywhere, people pick up trucks, fuck Trudeau flags.
Yeah.
It says fuck Trudeau. Black flag, white letters, Canada flag on it. People are mad. And so it's not just like everybody in Canada is just down with it. Now, enough people are down with it that he got elected, but he may not get elected the next time.
No, he may not. It turns out if you don't do a good job in a nominal democracy or some sort of democratic process, you probably won't find your way back at the top of the ticket. But you know who did? Donald Trump. So what's amazing is we have this sort of push. And I keep seeing this over and over again. The left is still trying to figure out what the hell happened and how do we defend what we just did, because it doesn't seem very defensible and most Americans don't seem all that in line with it. This is kind of a fun little story that comes from NBC. Trump says that his inauguration and his inaugural will all be about unity. And they're already going to predict that that's a tough sell. Well, the thing is that Donald Trump has brought in people in a big tent. We've talked about it here before. There are plenty of folks that you, as a potentially conservative listening to this, or an independent-minded person listening to this podcast, you're going, no, I don't want that person. You got upset about a surgeon general. We had this discussion the other day on social media. You're upset about some of the folks that are in there. He's got some pretty left-wing types with some pretty left-wing ideas, at least historically. And it's been embraced. That's what a big tent is about. Now, it's been my position on the show, and we've said it a couple times, so I'll say it again, that if you open the tent big, if you open it wide, you're going to get diverse viewpoints and people that don't necessarily agree with the so-called MAGA right, the conservative right. That's what's supposed to happen. That's how you open it up. That's what unity would look like. Unity would look like we kind of embrace a bunch of ideas, some of which we want, some of which we don't, in order to compromise in the areas that are most important to other people to get the guy at the top of the ticket. And that's what you should be seeing. NBC is going to resist this. They are already part of it. They are telling us it's a tough sell. And I threw up another little headline on this particular slide because it reminded me just how ugly it was. Not too long ago. It's a headline from October. You can see that right there. Trump loyalists spew racist, vulgar attacks at Harris and Democrats at the New York City rally. That was that Madison Square Garden rally that you'll notice. We haven't heard anything about that. Why? The reason that Trump won't be able to have a unity in his inaugural is because Trump is one of the most divisive figures in American politics. So striking a unifying tone is difficult. I don't think that's true. I think that they have painted him as such. They've basically sort of entered into a fantasy realm where whatever they say is going to be what goes. He's a guy that's trying to do a political makeover, they claim. And he's cast himself as something notably off-brand, a unifier. Well, didn't we get that same exact nonsense from Joe Biden quite recently, in fact? Didn't he step out in front of Independence Hall with an armed guard Marine standing behind and lit by red? And in a red and black image that will not soon go away, probably the thing that was the downfall of this particular president's legacy. He did the opposite of unity. He declared 50% of the country to be American enemies. The extremists, which is just sort of like people we don't like or agree with. And maybe that's why we've got Democrats right now kind of struggling to figure out how do we message. And why aren't Democrats trying to defend the legacy of Biden? Here's MSNBC attempting to do that. They're trying to say, why are people not trying to run on Biden's legacy? It's because he lost. Not only did he lose big by having to drop out of the race, but then his surrogate dropped out and failed. which is shocking to most of us because, I didn't think it was going to be fair. Here they are trying to discuss. They're trying to re-adjudicate something because they just cannot figure out how did we lose when we are the moral right. Again, it's a religious conviction that they have about it. And so religions don't have to look introspectively and decide whether or not their messaging was bad because their messaging is a moral ground. It has nothing to do with the sort of factual or poll-based or where the American people are. The American people are supposed to because they've been told to, and otherwise they're going to be bad people. So they're going to go out and keep telling us this.
The idea of defending President Biden's accomplishments and legacy. It does seem like right now, in the aftermath of the vice president's defeat, a lot of even Democrats are kind of running away from what the White House did over 4 years, even though those inside the West Wing are confident that history will regard them favorably, their legislative accomplishments at the very least. What is the challenge here for Democrats? How do you navigate this?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, we have to really reflect on the fact that President Biden, it wasn't even the first 4 years, it was the first 18 to 19 months of his presidency, passed 4 major economic bills. We talked about this last week on the show, Joe. Can you imagine where America's economy would be right now if we had not passed the American Rescue Plan after COVID and make sure that we could, get our, reduce inflation as much as we possibly could? And when you look at where the U.S. inflation numbers are compared to some of the other industrialized nations, we were doing far better off during COVID. You can't always say that to voters, but that's just the bottom line. So,
and by the way, that is so important, Adrian. I've been talking about, went overseas this weekend, talked to a lot of business leaders, talked to a lot of political leaders. Mm-hmm. They're all talking about basically the U.S. economic miracle. I've got to say, they're all downbeat.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of asking, how do we get here? What you guys have in America, because that gulf is widening between American prosperity and, I'll just say it, the EU and Britain's downturn. And my God, you look what's happening in France. You look at what's happening in Germany.
Yep.
Everybody in London this weekend were laughing. They said, okay, so let's get this straight. Italy is the most stable democracy over there, and Greece is one of the most stable economies.
People actually listen to that program for news, and they think that they're going to walk away informed. Is that not shocking and staggering? Listen, folks, you idiots out there that are complaining about the economy, that the entire election hinged on an economic principle, and inflation has screwed you over. You should be thanking God, aka government, for the American Rescue Plan. How dare you not recognize the brilliance of what was perpetrated upon you? How dare you not recognize how good your situation is? Europeans wish to have such a good thing. That's the position of Joe Scarborough. He talked to Europeans, and they wish that they had a Joe Biden. Maybe we could voluntarily send him there. I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he has any other capabilities in his life. Going to just wither away. Let's send him over. Let's export Joe Biden so he can solve their problems in the same way. Or whoever it is that's pulling the strings of the Joe Biden, right? Because that's really the question. It's not just that. He's got a pretty cool legacy going on right now, right? How do you defend the Biden legacy? How about this one? This is maybe, and what should be, the thing that goes down in history as the most incredible turn of events. We had no new wars, as exciting as that was. I think that Donald Trump's foreign policy was good and was actually probably better than most people will give him credit for. Why? Because the Abraham Accords, the fact that we didn't actually create more conflict in the Middle East, which we are seeing happen right now, like in the last couple days before he goes in. They're creating a brand new mess for him to fix. The historical legacy of Biden is they're going to look back and they're going to say, America was at war for 20 years with a group called the Taliban in Afghanistan. And in short order, in like 6-7 months of being president, Joe Biden pulled us out of there, left a power vacuum that within seconds, it was measured in days before that country fell to the people that we held it from for 20 years. And it was the most tactically unsound withdrawal that could happen. That was part one. And then, not to be outdone, in his last year, in the last, 60 days of his presidency, we've seen the failure and the weakness that we've projected. And yeah, it's because there's an ongoing war in Ukraine, which we've funded, which we've thrown unbelievable amounts of treasure into. We're seeing Syria captured by a group called HTS, which is functionally aligned with Al-Qaeda, the other people that we went to war with starting in 2001. So we've had a hard reset on giving territory back to terrorists. Huh. And here is Anthony Blinken saying that the Syrian people are going to get to choose it. They're going to get to choose it, even though it was sort of militarily conquered. This is an incredible legacy to try to defend. This is why they're not trying to defend it, by the way.
On Syria, very focused on the opportunity that now is before us and before the Syrian people to move from out from under the shackles of Bashar al-Assad to a different and better future for the Syrian people, one that the Syrian people decide for themselves.
As a different and better future that they will decide for themselves as they operate now under a new terrorist regime, not the old one. Okay? Defend that all you want. If you want, that's how you do it. But remember, Trump's going to have a hard time with unity. I got another fun thing. This is a story about poor Kamala Harris, who, by the way, is still the vice president. There's a great sort of like series of memes that are going on right now on the Twitter webs or whatever, running around saying that Donald Trump, by the way, he's not in office yet, would not do anything about school shootings. But if President Harris had existed, if Kamala Harris had been elected, then she would. And there's this brilliant little community notes fact check in real time by regular people, because we're not buying this nonsense, saying, she actually still in office. 4 years of Biden, no solutions to school shootings. It was never going to be about restricting guns, but that's kind of what they want to talk about. She's still as equally irrelevant and ridiculous. And here's a fun little story talking about her. This is coming from NPR. So why not? I like NPR sometimes. I've got some really interesting pieces on there. We're going to cover another piece of NPR later on. There was a time when Vice President Harris's campaign seemed like it had the youth vote all sewn up. You know, that youth vote, that famously strong and powerful youth vote that carries so many people into office. You know, the young people that basically don't know anything about how the country operates, as Jordan Peterson would say, doesn't even know how to clean their room, knows nothing about money, has never paid a significant amount in taxes, has no skin in the game when it comes to all these things. Those really intelligent people. And I say that as someone who just knew when I was younger. I was like, I just don't know what the hell I'd be voting for. I don't know enough. I don't have skin in the game. Well, you have some kids. You got some people out there looking at a future. You start understanding a little bit more. She gave a speech on Tuesday to young community leaders. I assume this is like young Obama types. And she made the not so subtle reference to the initial youth excitement about her presidential bid. She reminded them of the context in which they exist. Then she smiled and said, yeah, I did that. This is a very clever reference, according to NPR, to the 2023 speech where she talked about something, allegedly, her mother used to say. My mother would give us a hard time sometimes and say, don't you know what's wrong with you young people? You think you just fell out of a coconut tree. The coconut tree meme speech. What she doesn't realize, I guess, and maybe what NPR fails to note, because it's actually listed in here. The line became a meme. The meme became a digital rallying cry for young Democrats who were eager for a younger face after souring on Biden's presidency. Yes, they wanted that young face of Kamala Harris, a 60-year-old woman, because the 81-year-old man was too old for them. And so they embraced internet hype for 100 days. And then they failed. The issue was never about whether or not the meme or the coconut tree or the existing in context. Imagine this. I'm going to give you the same exact statement, and I'm going to phrase it as a thing that my father used to say to me. He never said this, by the way. But if he had said it, it would sound like this. I'd say, my dad would always look at us when he was young, and he would say, why are you guys operating this way? You have to understand that there are bigger effects that are happening around you. You didn't just fall out of an apple tree and then sprout into a full-grown plant. Okay, that's really boring and dumb. That's what she said, the coconut tree thing. The difference is, the noticeable difference is, I didn't do this. The weird laugh. So she's disingenuous. She's awkward. She's weird. She's not authentic. And they don't understand that it had nothing to do with the actual message. They had to do with the messenger and how bad it was. Scott Jennings is trying his best to educate people over at CNN. I don't know why. Just let him keep putting forward, disingenuous falsehoods. Let them keep putting Elizabeth Warren types and Kamala Harris. That'd be fine with me. I don't mind. They're not electable because they're weird. Because the thing that they had Tim Waltz, the dancing queen, as the man that was going to bring back masculinity, a guy who couldn't figure out how to load his own shotgun. So anyway, Scott Jennings is doing God's work, I guess. He's trying to bring sanity to a group of people that, again, they are holding on to religious fervor. They are holding on to dogma that we are better, and therefore we should win because we are better. Who could be against us? Because our God of government is with us. This seems to be kind of the way that it's operating. Anyway, he's trying to educate them. They're resistant. CNN may get some ratings simply because this man keeps going out there and saying things that seem pretty true.
Right. If your messengers are incorrect, then it doesn't really matter what the first two bullets are. It's that authenticity. And then what's the first clip we played tonight? Kamala Harris, who popped out and she saw her shadow. So we'll get 4 more years of word salads. If this is the road Democrats want to continue to go down, people who are going to use cliches, pablum, and sort of just word salad answers to really important questions that everyday people have, they will continue to lose. However, if they take his advice and get authentic candidates who may sometimes say things that are a little contradictory or maybe it's a little raw, people will forgive your warts and your contradictions if they think you're being real. I think he's onto something.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that. I mean,
Joe Biden himself is like at command thinking about this. Like right now, I don't. I just honestly don't.
These guys, by the way, coming to this conclusion here in December as Joe Biden is going out the door when the rest of America came to this conclusion months and months and months and months and months ago is the funniest thing I've heard today.
Can I also just say,
honestly,
he is not governing that way right now with the last few weeks that he has left. That's very telling.
The people around him should be thinking about these things. You need to democracy-proof, for lack of a better word, this coming administration. I mean,
you need to democracy-proof the coming administration. You need to insulate the tyranny of the majority. Well, they don't like it because the majority actually sided against them. But never mind that. Never mind any of those things. Let's just get focused in on the ridiculous. And what's amazing is that James O'Keefe just put out some quote unquote new journalism, another one of these sort of like go on a date and then hidden camera film somebody in Washington, D.C., where the big reveal is that a person who's an administrative analyst for the National Security Council, what did he share? Joe Biden is functionally dead and he doesn't actually do anything. Shocker. We all figured this out when he dropped out of the race because we knew this for years. We knew this when he ran in 2020. Anyway, again, mainstream, even some of the most like large Con Inc. type folks that are insulated against being ridiculous, it doesn't stop them from just saying things that are obviously true that everybody already said, agreed to, and moved on. They're over here adjudicating it on CNN. We're not any better necessarily on the political right, for whatever that's worth, just so we're all on the same page. We are going to talk a little bit about the things that Joe Biden is doing and not doing and the solution to the gun problem, which they have, which is coming up next. But first, I'm going to go ahead and break over to my buddies over at Patriot Mobile because, folks, the reason he lost, Americans have been tired and frustrated by a stalling economy and inflation and endless wars. You know, the things that apparently that the Europeans loathe. No, I'm sorry. They lust for. There's been a relentless assault on our values. Thankfully, there are companies like Patriot Mobile that still believe in America and our Constitution. We're proud to partner with Patriot Mobile because they are on the front lines fighting for the First and the Second Amendment, talking about that in a second, the sanctity of life, and for our military and our first responder heroes. You can take a stand for conservative causes. You can put America first by switching to Patriot Mobile. You can do it today. They get the same nationwide coverage because all the same big providers, they use the same big 3 networks. And they back their service with a coverage guarantee. They have a 100% US-based customer service team that will find the best plan for your needs. You can keep your number. You can keep your phone. You can upgrade. You can toss those things out. You can do so by going to patriotmobile.com/KSS. Remember, this is a different promo code, KSS for Kyle Seraphin Show. Or you can call them up at 972-PATRIOT. Relatively easy. Right now, you can get a free month of service when you use that offer code. It's KSS. Don't get fooled by other providers that are pretending to share your values. They don't and they can't. You can join us and switch to America's only Christian conservative mobile network at Patriot Mobile. Again, patriotmobile.com/KSS, patriotmobile.com/KSS, or 972-PATRIOT for that free month of service. All right. So we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. I promised it. Let's do that. We're talking about the gun situation. We're back in the news talking about it. You notice that they didn't have as much of a big gun issue. For some reason, I thought they were going to about Luigi Mangione because he went and shot somebody in New York City. And I thought we were going to hear about suppressors and assassins and 3D printed guns and danger and all that. And we didn't. Interesting. More on that a little bit later. The lionization of a guy who's being charged with first-degree murder in New York. We have to wait until it is a confused, suicidal young girl. CNN covering this one, small tight-knit community in Madison, Wisconsin, reeling from the school shooting as authorities continue to seek answers. I am troubled at the answers they might be able to find, and I think they are going to struggle at least a little bit. Why would that be? Because you've got the police chief out there who can't even figure out what the right pronouns are for a little girl whose name was Natalie, but apparently went by the name Samantha. I don't know why. Neither do you. Why this gets included in all these pieces is really bizarre. It's like, what relevance does that have? You had a young child that was suicidal. Apparently, there were a combination of factors that were the motivation, and they are trying to determine that at this moment. They declined to give a lot more answers. This is not shocking to us. They've had students in the Abundant Life Christian School go out and talk about it. Here's what they broke down in CNN that I find very interesting. The victims. The names have not been publicly revealed. There was a full-time member of the staff, a teacher, and a teenager, and then the young gal herself, 15-year-old, was the shooter. The weapon, here's where we got to get focused, because we got to talk about gun control. That's going to be the big piece. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is tracing the weapon. This is what they do, by the way. If you've never seen it, every single time that there is a decent sort of attention span, a national priority story that involves a firearm, the ATF announces that they are, quote unquote, responding. I put it out on Twitter the other day. There's always an ATF guy on scene. They don't have any federal nexus to investigate it, but what they do is they show up and then they do something called tracing the weapon. The weird thing about tracing the weapon is their ability to do that is actually not allowed under federal law. They're not actually allowed to do this. They have this like half-ass version where they go and they collect all the records from federal firearms licensees, the people that run gun stores, and they take all of those forms 4473 that you make and you fill out whenever you go and buy a gun, and they take them and they keep them in this sort of like paper warehouse that they're able to look through and find in fairly short order, considering how stupidly that is organized, because they're not allowed to have a national database of firearms. But they do have this sort of default version of it, and that's what they do to chase the weapon. And so what they want to do is find out the origin of the weapon, who purchased it, and how it got from the manufacturer all the way into the hands of a 15-year-old girl. Newsflash, the story has already been sort of put out there. It was given to her by parents who seem really, really, really in a sad situation of bad decision theater. Court records obtained by the Washington Post show that Rupnow, this is the girl's name, Natalie Rupnow, had a turbulent home life, that she'd been enrolled in therapy, and the documents reveal that her parents divorced and remarried multiple times. I don't know if that means they remarried to other people multiple times or if they married each other multiple times. It's not really clear. But it says that their custody agreements forced her to move between their homes every 2 to 3 days. So an unstable home situation may be responsible for this girl's really sad outcomes. For those of you that have been children and grew up through divorce situations, you know exactly what's going on there. It seems like family of the shooter should be the number one priority to talk about, because family and stability in family makes a huge difference. There was a video I watched the other day, and I didn't actually grab it. I didn't think to. It would actually be hard to watch in a podcast format. But it's a toddler or even a sub-toddler, like an infant sitting there in the first year of life, playing with toys. Probably like 14, 15 months old, nonverbal. And the toddler is sitting on the parent's lap, playing with toys. And then someone comes in. It's a woman, by the way. It's not a man, but a woman comes in and starts a verbal altercation with with the mom. And when that verbal altercation happens, the toddler is unable to play anymore, because all human beings have the same instinct. We all look around and we're looking for threat. And when you are that small, it's incredibly disruptive. And we know this from watching our own children. If you have conflict in the house, the children are more on edge. They are more likely to engage in conflict with each other. They are more likely to be edgy. They are more likely to be distracted from otherwise sort of childlike activities and play. If you fill a child's life with turmoil that comes from divorce and, adult relationships that are not stable, then they're going to have an instability. A very, very small number of them will result in something like this. But to act like it's the gun fault, which is what they've decided to do, That's the way you got to do it. So, of course, we're going to hear David Hogg pop on the screen and talk about it. He's the survivor of Parkland shooting. There's some questions about that. His dad was apparently an FBI agent, and he is running for DNC vice chair because politics is the only way this kid is going to be able to make money. He stands on the graves of his fallen classmates. He's going to do it again. And so here he is talking about why the Democrat Party has done a great job and why Republicans are evil. Again, it's a religious argument. It continues to be. They don't need to have facts on their side. You don't hear him campaigning for home life or for better families or less divorce, which would be the right way to go, and not less abortions and more responsible people. It's this.
School shootings have happened. 418 since you made that speech.
I would say it's unbelievable, but it's not. Because unfortunately this has been going on for so long, since before I was born. I was born a year after Columbine. But I think the thing that disturbs me the most is how our politicians have continued to fail us. Our parties have continued to fail us as well. Certainly the Democratic Party has gotten better in recent years on this issue. But part of the reason why I'm running to be vice chair is because I want a party that acts with courage to address the issue of gun violence, not in a not in a small symbolic way, not in just, let's pass this tiny law way, but a way that actually makes sure that there isn't, half the number of school shootings, but that there are no school shootings anymore. And I can tell you right now for a fact, if Democrats had 60 votes in the Senate, we're still not going to get major gun control passed, because I know our party and the politics within it are going to say, well, this is too controversial for us to pass because of these states that it took for us to get to 60 votes. I want to help build a Democratic Party, not one that I'm just calling out publicly, but one that I'm actively working, trying to fix on the inside to make sure that what happened to my classmates is never happening again. And our party is one of the best ways of doing that, but we have to be bolder. We have to go further on the issue of gun violence and not just address how does somebody get a gun like the AR-15, but address the hatred that drives so many of these school shootings, address the poverty that drives so much gun violence, and the desperation that drives gun suicide. We have to address this from the top up and the bottom down.
I'm curious if he just acknowledged that there's a sort of a mental illness, a depression, a financial incentive for crime, and so on, then doesn't that kind of indicate that the person behind the gun is the only thing that matters? Does the gun really matter? They have to demonize the AR-15, which is really funny. The funny thing is, and some of you may realize this if you're gun people, but if you're not a gun person and you've been sort of just watching from the outside and seen the demonization of the so-called black guns, the best part about it is some of the biggest school shootings that have ever happened with like 9mm handguns, like a Glock, which is what it sounds like happened here. That also was the case at Virginia Tech, which was an incredible number of people who were killed. Handguns are highly effective at doing that. In fact, in Virginia, a handgun that can accept more than 20 rounds in the magazine is considered an assault weapon. When I used to live in Virginia, I used to laugh because I would go to meetings where Jerry Connolly was speaking with the moms who demand action, and I would have an assault weapon on my person because I have 33-round magazines that'll fit into my Glock. It turns out you can make the magazine as big as you want. It just has to fit into the mag well, and then behind it can be a freaking drum if you want. But they're willing to demonize something that Democrats actually made the national gun of America, right? The assault weapons ban in 1994, which Joe Biden likes to stand on and talk about how great it was and what they did and how they got it passed and all this kind of stuff. Nobody was buying mass amounts of AR-15s. There are two things that changed the game. Number one is the assault weapons ban. That changed the game where people were like, oh, you're banning this? I'm going to go ahead and have to get a couple of those. I'm definitely going to get those. As soon as that bill sunsets, we're getting some. And they did. And I did. I was one of those people. In 2006, I got my first AR at a gun show, which is the last time I've ever bought anything at a gun show, by the way. They're not the greatest way to get it done. But they made it the enemy. It's Harry Potter style. It's like there were many options, but they chose that one to be their enemy, and that made it to be the thing that many people wanted. And then the second thing is the innovation of technology and the global war on terrorism and the fact that so many veterans came home and had experience using platforms that were similar to that. They had been trained on a weapon system in the M4s and the M16 types. Okay, so they went in and they said, well, I want to use a weapon system that I'm most familiar with, and this is one that I am. one of the folks that support our program and also don't have a problem with your AR-15. They're not going to come and try and take it. In fact, they're quite the opposite. They support veterans, including veterans who have disabilities and have given a lot for this country. My friends over at Patriot Coolers. And if you guys don't have one of these things, if you're in the market, don't buy anything you don't need. But if you're in the market for an outstanding product, this one is really, really good. And I left it in my garage for about a week and I forgot that I had it out there. I thought it was actually up on my wall. And I found it again, and I've been very excited to find my Major, which is their large 40 ounces of refrigerated / thermal insulated coolerness. You guys can get a tumbler from Patriot Coolers using promo code KYLE. They can be engraved or not engraved if you want the Kyle Seraphin Show edition, which is to say we have the Suspendables badge, or you can put the flag on there. They look outstanding. Actually, here. Reach down and grab another one. Look at this one. This one is actually also quite good. This is the 30 ounce. You can get the 30. You can get the 40. You can get a 20. You can get a 19. You can get a 16. You can get a water bottle. They have all kinds of really great stuff. They're great gifts. They're probably on the very edge of being able to get it out for Christmas right now. If you guys do fast shipping, you can probably get that done because they ship from America and not from overseas. PatriotCoolers.com. Promo code KYLE. Save yourself 10% on that and get free shipping over $50. Buy two. One for you and one for a friend. You'll be happy you did. Only if you're in the market, though. That's what we say. All right. Let's keep pushing on. Speaking of Jerry Connolly, which I brought up a little bit earlier, I didn't know that he had cancer. Did you guys know this? Jerry Connolly apparently announced this. I noticed it. I mean, the guy has lost a lot of weight. He was a big fat guy with a dumb mustache. But he's lost weight and not in a healthy way. And apparently on, I guess, November the 7th, he announced that he had cancer, and it's esophageal cancer, which doesn't sound like a really good thing or a fun way to exist. And I guess he had a little win because Democrats are turning over that great messenger. We're going to have the fresh faces by letting old white guys who have 1970s mustaches and are dying of cancer instead of the AOC types, continue. Do as you wish. He's not very lovable. He's not very honest. When you listen to him talk, he's not very informed or educated on a lot of the stuff he talks about, but so be it. He's a Democrat veteran, which is to say that he's been in the Democrat Party for a long time, not that he served America. He fended off a challenge from progressive Republican AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on Tuesday to be the top-ranked member. Isn't that pathetic, too, by the way? I think he's like 74 years old, and he's being challenged by this 30-something. This is how serious the Democrats are. It's A or B. It's either someone who has the experiential equivalent of being a child. She worked in a restaurant and now she's a congressperson and a social media star, or a guy that's been in Congress for 1,000 years. Those are their two choices. Good deal. He served on the Oversight Committee in 2009. He led the subcommittee on government operations since 2013. He announced that he has cancer. This is all in the story here. And he won the vote to become the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, so we can expect the opposite of oversight from what he does. They're not particularly interested in doing real oversight. Why? Because they're the same kind of people that have to defend the ridiculous and pathetic legacy of Joe Biden. They're the ones that are really excited. They kind of work hand in glove with the people like, Republicans that want to pass dumpster fire spending bills. I'm sure Jerry Connolly is 100% on board with this. Supposedly, we got a big win if you listen to Mike Johnson. But I've got some news from some other people. This technique, you'll notice what day it is today. It's Wednesday, December the 18th, isn't it? Stand by, because Nostradamus, a.k.a. Thomas Massey, is going to give us a little insight into this. First, let's hear a little bit about the CR, which is going on. Government oversight seems to be a real myth, at least on the Democrat side, and for what you guys like to call rhinos, but I would call the real Republicans. The real people. You are not real Republicans if you're conservative. Real Republicans want to spend money. And that's why they congratulate themselves when they set up a spending bill to spend more of our money right under the gun and break their own promises because they hope that your memory cycle is not long enough to recall it. Some Republicans are pissed. But here's Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, congratulating himself on a job well done, doing the thing that he promised he wouldn't do. Stand by, because I got the receipt on that in just 1 second. First, let's listen to Mike talk about it.
New spending, but we fought them off from that. We did add $231 million in new Secret Service funds, but everybody understands that that's critically important right now. We added strings attached to it. We said it was contingent upon the Secret Service participating fully in our oversight responsibilities and investigations right now, and I am certainly hopeful that they will. They will need to if they expect to have the additional funds. Also, we made sure that that was kept within the spending cap, so it's not new money, but that will help us. We did expand our task force, as you know, on the assassination to add the second assassination attempt, and I think that's really important. But overall, with the CR, as our leader just noted, we have broken the Christmas Omni. And I have no intention of going back to that terrible tradition. So there won't be a Christmas omnibus. As somebody asked me in the hallway a little while ago, will there be many buses? We don't want any buses. We're not going to do any buses, okay? We'll deal with that in the lame duck. And I'm going to I'm going to urge the Senate to do their job. As Leader Scalise noted,
we're not going to have any buses. We're just doing a CR. This is such a depressing moment to read this stuff and to listen to them. Why do they say CR? Because if they said continuing resolution, then that would be a little bit more. And then you realize, what are they continuing? They're continuing the spending, but they've also added to it. What's the difference between that and a minibus or an omnibus? Duration. It's more of the same. Here's ABC News reporting on it. Congressional leaders have finally released the short-term government funding bill to avert a shutdown at the end of this week. I actually hope they shut it down. I don't care. The measure will fund the government through March 14th, so they've just kicked the can down for another 3 months because these people, they have one job to do: run the power of the purse. And they're too busy doing everything else, investigations and oversight. Yeah, some of those things are important, but do your job first. You know it. It's predictable. It happens every single freaking year that you have to put a funding bill in for what the federal government is going to spend. And they don't do it. I don't know why that they can't just and they have to do it in these insanely long bills. This bill was pictured on a desk, and it's about 8 inches tall in single leaf paper. It is 1,547 pages long. There's no way they get through all this stuff. And they bury little things in like obscure language. I saw a report on Twitter today saying that one of the things in there is that it's going to change the way that the federal judiciary is able to look at subpoenas into congressional records, and they want to eliminate and quash all requests for records. I'm sure that's part of it. There was a little, I don't have the context of how it came out, but it seems like they were defining it pretty broadly, which does tend to overreach if they're saying that the judiciary can't look into it or the executive can't investigate. That's strange. The measure includes $100.4 billion in disaster relief because they ran out of money because they gave our money to illegal aliens. $10 billion in economic relief for farmers, so they're giving the payoff there in subsidies. It reauthorizes the Department of Homeland Security Unmanned Aircraft Systems Program, which I'm sure is the reason why we're seeing these drones out there. It counters the potential threat of drones and allows Homeland Security to have all kinds of coordinated systems to address them. The Farm Bill goes for a year, by the way, when they signed it in, so not everything goes on just till March. It grants D.C. control of RFK Stadium, so they can move the NFL's Commanders from Maryland to D.C. I'm sure that's super important. That's why you have to stick that in. So everybody gets a little bit of something. Anna Paula Luna was talking about how they basically stuck all the things in that she was trying to get on a separate bill, and so she has to vote in favor of it because her constituents need the things that are in the bill, but she doesn't like the rest of it. That's what they do. They just shove in, everybody gets their piece, but then they also put in the big piece. You know who predicted this? Tom Massey, a.k.a. Nostradamus. Here he is calling out the things that have been going on for years. He talks about 7 years ago. You won't be able to see this if you're just listening, but the date on the screen is 2019. That was 5 years ago. So in the last 12 years, he's been seeing this happen over and over again. They always get it right about the time of December 20th, right about the time when the recess is going to basically let him out. And they say, vote for this bill or you don't get to go home for Christmas. This is the game. And they think we don't pay attention.
We have broken the Christmas Omni. And I have no intention of going back to that terrible tradition. So there won't be a Christmas omnibus. As somebody asked me in the hallway a little while ago, will there be many buses? We don't want any buses. We're not going to do any buses, okay?
And I've seen this play call like 4 times in the 7 years I've been in Congress. They've punted the ball until December 20th. And what they'll do is they'll come in a closed room with us and they'll say, okay, now we've got the really big omnibus. And if you vote for this, you can go home for Christmas. But if you don't vote for it and it fails, we're going to make you stay here over Christmas and New Year's. And it's almost like a dystopian future. I've been in the closed room where they start chanting, vote, 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 vote.
Yeah.
And people run up there and vote for something they've not read.
CR, CR, CR. Oh, you want to go home for Christmas? Well, vote for this, and we'll let you go see your families and your new grandbaby, and you can watch your 2-year-old open presents. But if you don't, you're going to stay here with your leadership and their leadership, and wait for a bunch of geriatric senators to send over the answer.
By the way, I made another prediction that it would end right before Christmas, that it wouldn't go till next spring. Because, and we've talked about this on your show, Brian, for as long as I've been coming on your show, which is at least 12 years.
See it coming a mile away. Go ahead.
Every year, they do the same play. The Christmas Eve shutdown panic. Because here's what they're doing. They're taking our families hostage, the families of congressmen in Washington, D.C. on December 20th, which is when this CR expires, and they're going to either put another worse CR that's probably going to have Ukraine and everything else attached to it, or they're going to do the full-on omnibus, depending on how the election comes out.
So that last little thing you heard was him in October. He just keeps predicting the same stuff because they play the same playbook, and they assume that 12 months later that Americans just forget. But the pattern is very easy to observe. It's really gross. It's also like really lame and lazy. But it works because most Americans are not engaged in this. I actually had a conversation with some of my best buddies from high school. And I have a really interesting group of friends from high school. I've got one that works in technology. I've got another one that is kind of an entrepreneur type, and he's worked in oil fields and done some other thing. Another one is a physician, and then, and I'm in the group there, and we're talking about this. And I said, despite all the information that Americans have, and they have incredible amounts of information, way more than we had when I was growing up, there's no evidence that anybody is actually using that information to do anything. One of them is about medical labs and research. We were talking about how I don't actually run labs on myself, and I have no idea. I haven't been to a doctor in like 8 years. I don't know what my health situation is in my body other than how I feel, and that's all I gauge it on. I gauge my appetite. I gauge my the way that I can do physical activities. I said a lot of people go out there, they get all this information, and what do they do with it? There's no evidence that we're actually a rational people. Because despite all of that information being available to us and within our grasp, nobody does anything with it. Like nobody's out there actually making actions happen related to that data. So we all know that Tom Massey is right. And we all know that he's calling out these people for doing the thing that they keep doing. And it doesn't stop the fact that it happens every damn year. All right. I guess like that is the thing. What do they call it? Like insanity? That insanity is just doing the same thing over again, even though you have evidence that it won't work out and you just think it will, like for no particular reason. Here's a good example of insanity that's popping up in anytime I can do a climate piece, I want to. This one's from CBS. It's really fun because if you watch the way that they're doing it, it's the same reason why they don't have any trust from their listener group. They're basically acting like people are dumb and can't read their own words. And I guess most people read the headline, so here's the headline. Coal use hitting all-time high in 2024, which is on track to be the hottest year ever, report says. Okay, they're literally doing the fallacy of a correlation instead of causation in the title. This is dated today. Coal use hits all-time high in 2024, which is on track to be the hottest year ever. So hottest year ever, highest coal use. There's no evidence that those things are linked together. The best part of it is it has nothing to do with what's going on in the United States. For all of their anger. World coal use sets an all-time high use. The International Energy Agency said on Wednesday. And it's all but certain to be the hottest year in recorded history. Despite calls for humanities to halt burning the filthiest fossil fuel driving climate change, they say with no sense of irony and zero implications that there may be some contention there. Energy watchdogs expect that global demand for coal will continue to reach record highs for the third year in a row. Scientists warn that planet-warming greenhouse gases will have to be dramatically slashed to limit global heating to avoid catastrophic impacts on the Earth and humanity. Remember which one is first. It's really important that we protect Mother Gaia Earth, these pagans say, and humanity second. Now, why on earth would these people be using more coal? And what can we do about it here as good Americans? How do we fix this? Well, it turns out it would be dependent on China, which for the past quarter century has consumed 30% more coal than the rest of the world's countries combined. I'm going to say that one more time because it's about 4 paragraphs deep and below the fold. it would be dependent on China, which for the past quarter century has consumed 30% more coal than the entire rest of the world combined. 30% more. Why? They're the biggest user. You think that we have any ability to affect whether or not China is going to use coal? No, we do not. Their demand for electricity, which is the most significant driving force, has caused the increase, and they've burnt a third more than the entire world carbonized in their power plants. Beijing has sought to diversify its electrical sources with a massive expansion into solar and wind, but it's still going to hit 4.9 billion tons, which itself is another record, and also has no causal ability to say whether or not it is. So the United States has no ability to affect this. That's the best part. The other thing is, for all of your climate pagan friends out there that are talking about, can we get electric cars? And we all need to do this thing. How do they think that those electric cars are charged? Apparently, people have never thought of this. It's amazing. People in my own circle have not paid attention to how in the world the electricity is generated. Unless you are looking at a electric power plant that's running off nothing but solar and wind, which is basically none of them, unless you have nuclear energy, which is a possibility in some parts of the area that you are, a lot of them are going to either come from coal or natural gas. They are going to be burning, that's right, fossil fuels. So the fossil fuels, here's how we want our fossil fuels. We want them laundered to us in the same way we want kind of fake information laundered to us, in the same way that we believe that the government is the right solution. I'm just talking on behalf of the political left here. It has to be laundered to you. They have to burn the fossil fuel or what, otherwise ignite it. Then it has to turn turbines or whatever they're doing, whether it be melting, pushing water up and steam and so on. They have to do something that's going to turn something that's going to take the potential energy in the fossil fuel into kinetic energy. Then they have to store that in some sort of a battery or some sort of a harnessing device. Then they're going to send it across wires, and there's a drop in energy every single time you do it. And once it's been transmitted all the distance from wherever that power plant exists to wherever you are, then they're going to take it and they're going to load it into a battery, and the battery is going to take it, and then it's going to transmit it into your car, into the wheels. Or you could have that power plant under the hood. That's what an engine is. Yes, there's a refining process, but that happens for all the other things too. It's like, how have people not figured out how this all works? Maybe it's because the very, very serious journalists that are out there are trying to sell us something that's false. They're trying to push agenda over reality. I got a good example of that. It's from MSNBC. It is fantastic. It is another concern of why Donald Trump will not be a unifier. This is Nicole Hannah-Jones. You'll know her from being a famous racist and writing a thing called the 1619 Project, which is not factually accurate. It doesn't have to even be true, but it is her feelings about how some things in history could be slanted so that we can have important conversations. Not factually accurate conversations, but important ones nonetheless, kind of like getting rid of fossil fuels. The other thing that we need to do is get more racism, because racism fuels an entire industry of dumb people that don't have a job otherwise. Remember, Donald Trump is dangerous. We have to go ahead and talk about this. This is why he can't unify us. It turns out he can't unify us because we have people like this that refuse to actually join the rest of us in reality and say that 2024 America and 2025 USA in the future, in addition to maybe having a 51st Canadian state, also doesn't have this surplus of racism. It just doesn't exist in the same way that we can't affect fossil fuels. But also, journalists, here they are.
By asking you, at this point, it might even be somewhat of a badge of honor that the 1619 Project has basically been singled out by Donald Trump in terms of he's threatening to stop funding to schools that engage that as part of their curriculum. What does that say to you, not just as the creator of the project, but as someone whose background is rooted in journalism and storytelling and truth-telling?
Well, I think what it says to me is that we are facing an epic battle in the next 4 years with an administration that we know, as you just laid out, has a history of attacking journalists, of calling for violence against journalists, of suing journalists, of surveilling journalists, and also seeking to legislate against the work of journalists, which is what Trump tried to do with the 1619 Project.
No, he just thought that you're garbage. Remember, the word journalist can be synonymous with priests. They are the acolytes that serve the sort of the ministers of government. The whole point is they really want people to be able to listen to the good word that they are preaching, and you cannot question it in any way, shape, or form. If you do, you are a heretic, and heretics have to be excommunicated. They have to be removed from polite society, and they are very, very bad people. And so if you happen to be some of those people that make a lot of money and you want to get behind Donald Trump, then you're part of the problem. This is the last little clip I have here from Rob Reich. He's the former labor secretary. The best thing about him is he's a multimillionaire. All estimates that I could find online said his net worth is between $4 and $5 million. He is going to tell you, though, that as a former government official, as a professor, and as an author, he is very much in touch with the everyday man like you, the everyday woman who lives in real America. And that's why Elon Musk is a real big problem. I don't know if you guys seen Elon Musk, but I would hang out with him over this guy every day. So here's the last little tag. Again, it's always about the same weird narrative that our billionaires are good, our millionaires are good, and everybody else is bad if they don't agree with us. It's religious.
I think the biggest problem with having so many billionaires at the top of government is that billionaires don't exactly know how normal people live. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, the way people get to the top of the Trump administration is by providing a lot of money. I mean, Elon Musk contributed, the latest data I've seen say that Elon Musk contributed something in the order of $277 million.
And then he goes on to talk about how that's a really good return on investment. I'm sure Elon Musk does things only thinking about money. That doesn't seem to be the case, even if it tends to work out his way. Sometimes things in the world actually work out in our favor. Doesn't mean he's a good actor all the time, but a lot of the stuff he's done have been objectively good at sort of breaking down some of these nonsensical narratives. All right, that's what I've got for today. I actually have some more things we'll cover down on, but we'll just do it tomorrow. We're going to talk about Luigi with the squeegee Magione and how he's being sort of worshipped as a cult, why it's going to be difficult for people in New York to be able to convict him. There's some reasons why they're going to have trouble. They actually probably overcharged him with what they did. So all of that tomorrow. Stick around for that. We'll be doing the call-in show if you want to be part of that, where you can discuss the things that you guys are interested in. We'll do it on Thursday. It's Thursday nights at 8 Eastern. That's 7 Central. And we do the call-in show over at Local. So go to KyleSerafin.com, KyleSerafin.com in order to join us on Locals, and you can be a subscriber to be able to be part of it. I got a palate cleanse for you today. That's just a good reminder from a former Navy SEAL. His name is Chad Wright, and he's kind of just saying it without saying it. You can carry a gun because you're an American, because you have certain liberties that are not dependent on politicians, which is a short way of saying no matter what state you live in, carry a gun and don't be a bitch, which is kind of like what the meme says. Here he is telling people he doesn't give a crap about what the gun laws are. This is the America that we need to go back to in 2025.
The right to keep and bear arms. I'm going to carry my freaking gun however I want to.
That's correct.
You think I need your permit to conceal carry my gun? Screw you. I will disregard any law that goes against my fundamental rights as an American citizen. I carry guns everywhere I go, across state lines. I don't give a crap. I don't even look at the law. And I may wind up in prison one day. I don't freaking know, but I don't care, because I will not obey a law that violates my right to keep and bear arms. And here's the second thing for you listeners. If you do not carry a gun as an American citizen every single day, everywhere you go, you are neglecting your duty as an American citizen. You are failing to exercise your rights, and actually I would go as far as to say one of your most important rights. So if you aren't carrying a gun, if you're listening to this, look at yourself right now. If you are not carrying a gun, or you are not within arm's reach of a gun, you are wrong. You are dead wrong. Guess what, man?
That's it, man. Go out and be protectors. Women, protect yourself. Hinge against all kinds of retarded things that are going on in the world. This is Christmas. That means that people are going to act stupidly. Maybe you can also wish them the grace and peace of the one true Savior in this season, instead of doing the Merry Christmas. I Merry Christmas someone from Chase Bank the other day, and it was a nice thing to do. All right. God bless all of you. I hope that you have better weather than we're having here in Texas, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning on Thursday here on the Kyle Seraphin Show. Make sure you share this episode. Give us a comment, and I will see you then.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.